Okay, so I'm so excited today to have Debora Robertson here. I have been a fan for a while, and but this is actually the first time that we've met to see that we are animated versions of ourselves. So Deborah had a book out this year called Notes from a Small Kitchen Island, which I absolutely love, and I'm obsessed with my cookbooks. I wish I could just spin round. I have a separate cookbook library in my kitchen. And if my kitchen wasn't so messy, I would spin the computer around so you could see it. So I think that most people know by now. So part of the unique selling point of my little bookshop is that I'm asking writers that I admire to put together their own lists from their own genre. So because they are the experts, and we're writers are the people who are always pressing books into people's hands, because it's our life, isn't it, Deborah?
It really is.
So and actually I realized just before speaking to Deborah that her copy my copy rather of her book is not with me at the moment, because I pressed it into somebody else's hand, my neighbor. So would you just show us your book so we can...
I'll be delighted.
Yeah.
This is my book, Notes from a Small Kitchen Island.
Yeah, would you lift it up a little bit more? We can't see that. Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. And it's even more gorgeous inside, because we were just discussing actually that the cookbooks, and you were saying perhaps that all of them that you chose have a similar thing in common, that they're more than just cookbooks really at the moment, aren't they? They're offering a little piece of the writer as well, in a way that I don't know, I think it's quite new. What do you think?
I think there is definitely a trend for these recipes and stories type of book, food writing as memoir. I think it resonates with lots of people, because I think now the internet has changed what we look for. Because probably like you, if I've got 5 aubergines I need to use up, I probably will Google aubergine recipes and I will instantly have thousands of recipes, some of them better than others. But so now I think when you write a cookbook, you need to give people a bit more. You need to give them the stories, because I'm that person, I think you probably are too. Always, when I had a cookbook, I always like the bit above the recipe that tells you the story of where they learned to cook it, or where it's from, or it's their mum's recipe, something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that has been a trend for a few years, but I think COVID has made that a bigger trend.
Yeah, and you had a big story to tell, didn't you, in COVID?
I'm one of those annoying people who changed my life in COVID.
Oh, it's
I'm
not
that
annoying,
person.
it's inspiring.
But during COVID, that September in 2020, when we could all suddenly travel again, my husband and I came to this village in the south of France where we've been on holiday forever. Because we lived in London, in Hackney, which I love, but I just wanted to see an horizon and be somewhere else. So we rented this house, we've rented on the port forever. And that's where I wrote my book. But the life-changing thing is, while I was here, there's a walk from that house into the village that goes past this amazing old house that I always used to call the Sleeping Beauty house, because it's the most lovely house right on the water next to the village. And it was abandoned, and I could never understand why it was abandoned. And so when we were here, it was for sale. Da, 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 da. And I said to my husband, we have to go and see the house. I have to go in the house, but if I go in, I don't know what will happen, so be prepared.
Oh my goodness.
And I walked in and I got about 10 feet into the hallway. It's got a big wide hallway with ceramic, well, those old 19th century ceramic tile and a marble staircase, and the dream. And but really run down. It looks like something out of a Wes Anderson film, And the estate agent was chatting in my ear. I couldn't hear one thing she was saying, because all the hair on my head sort of stood on end. And I just thought, well, this is my house. I don't know how it's my house. I don't know how we can pull this off. Anyway, long story short, a year later, we were living in this house on the water, in our crazy restaurant. I mean, you can see behind me how chaotic it is still, but it's just the happiest thing. And I did a thing I'm very risk averse. I'm a Cancerian. I love my home, all of those things. And I never thought I would do this thing, but I did it. And it's, you know, I'm 55. And when you do something at that age, when I would have been very happy living in London forever, but to throw all my life up in the air and do this brand new thing, it's made me feel like, well, what else can I do? What other adventures can I have?
Yeah.
So it's been a very exciting thing to do. It's been exhausting, but so fascinating and exciting.
Yeah.
So highly recommend.
Good. Okay, let's all do it.
Yeah, let's everybody do it. But the thing that I was thinking about is when I was here in lockdown, when we were in the rented house, I came here really to write this book. But it was a very odd feeling because France was in lockdown. Well, almost as soon as we got here, France went back into lockdown. So all the restaurants closed, the market closed, everybody wore masks everywhere. So you felt very detached from things, this weird feeling of being in this place, but not. It was just a landscape. It wasn't a living landscape. It was like a ghost town almost. So every day I'd sit at the dining table in the house and write this book. And I slightly had this feeling of, oh, well, it doesn't matter. The world's ending. Nobody's ever going to read this. And in a weird way, I think that was very liberating. Yeah. And I think that's why it's much more personal than it would have been if I'd written it in normal times. And I think that's apparent to me in this big raft. There's amazing cookbooks coming out this autumn, just really incredible. And I think a lot of them, I see that in it too. Lots of them were written during lockdown, and I think lots of them feel much more personal and connected to the home than maybe books have felt before. Nobody now, thank goodness, is pretending to do restaurant food at home. I'm a bit reluctant to say comfort eating because it's such a cliche, but cliches are cliches for a reason. It's a real thing. So lots of the recipes I'm looking at now, lots of the books I'm looking at now are all about memory and food and simplicity and feeding yourself good things and nurturing yourself through food. I mean, I was reading, there's an American food writer called Ruth Reichel, and I was reading her book yesterday, which is several years old. It's from when she used to edit an amazing American food magazine called Gourmet, which was suddenly closed overnight. And she'd been this very powerful magazine editor guru. And overnight, she had no job. And this book is that year in her life. And I think the subtitle is something like 136 recipes that saved my life. Yeah. In that book, she writes about cooking for people is how you show you care for people. Yeah. And I think that's so true. I mean, we're all terrible feeders. I'm always pushing food on people. I can't help myself. But I think it's true. Yeah, totally. Especially if you're kind of Anglo-Saxon. I think, you know, if it's difficult for some of us, you know, it's difficult to say I love you, but it's not difficult to make a cake for somebody. Yeah, you know? It's really. And that's the same thing.
I also think that, I mean, my way of getting through severe like stress and periods of upheaval is to go back to basics. So eat well, sleep well, exercise. You know, a bereavement or a divorce or, you know, something upsetting. And so perhaps we all kind of collectively went back to basics in that COVID period, and food was one of the things that we could still do and we could enjoy with people, you know, in our bubble. And so it makes sense to me that that would come through, I suppose, in the writing.
I think some of us had more time as well. We suddenly had these big stretches of days to fill. You have to eat, so you might as well eat something delicious. I mean, I know we all joke about the banana bread thing. Everybody was madly baking banana bread, but it's something simple you can do, and it's something you can do on your own, or you can do with your kids, you know.
And batch cooking as well. I remember
batch cooking was massive. I'm not a batch cooker though, because I'm not decisive enough. I get bored very easily. You know, if I make some massive thing, like, oh, do I really want to eat 10 lots of?
Oh, I can eat it all week. I'm terrible at that. I'm terrible. No, I think it's true that, you know, and also they say that books are recession proof, because
Yeah.
in times where we have to tighten our belt, we still treat ourselves to these smaller things. And so
when I used to work in women's magazines, we used to, lipstick was recession,
okay, yeah,
because it was something you could buy for a few pounds that would
yeah.
cheer you up.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm hoping as I'm going into this venture that books are recession proof. But I think in the same way, food, you know, when we couldn't go out and we couldn't do all those things, then maybe people did, you know, try with different ingredients or spend that little bit more on food because we were treating ourselves, because we couldn't treat ourselves in the usual way. So, so do you want to talk us through some of your selections? Because
I
I'd love to
do.
hear, I'd love to hear why you love them so much and why you
Okay.
press these books into our hands.
I love, I mean, like with food, I'm always pressing food in people's hands, but I'm always pressing books into people's hands too. And I think the first one is this lovely book by Jeremy Lee, which is called Cooking Simply and Well, which is what we're talking about, for One or Many.
Nice.
And Jeremy Lee is the most delightful man. He's a chef at Quo Vadis in London, and just one of the most life-enhancing, joyful people. And his food is really beautiful. And this is his first cookbook, so I'm really excited about that, because you'll get to the chance to cook his amazing things at home for the first time. But more than that, it's one of those books. I've had this on my bedside table for about 2 weeks now, and I keep dipping into it because he's such a beautiful writer, and it's such a joyful celebration, not just of food, but of life. And that's what we all want. And I think he wrote a lot of this during lockdown too. And I think it has that reflective quality that we're all talking about. It's got gorgeous photographs by Eleanor Heatherwick, who's one of the top food photographers. So it's a real feast in every sense. And it's just got these recipes that I can imagine myself cooking forever from his, because he's from Dundee.
Okay.
And it's got his mum's shortbread recipe in here. And it's got almond tart. I mean, how delicious is that? And lots of simple, like asparagus and Leeton cheese tarts. I mean, don't you just want to eat that? And things like razor clams with breadcrumbs. Now, where I live now in France, we're on the sea, so there is so much shellfish here. So I'm always looking for new ways to cook shellfish because they're really cheap here. So I'm making the most of it. So this book is just an absolute joy and a delight. And it really is. It might be my most given at Christmas cookbook this year, I think.
Okay.
I think people will really...
Right. That's a big endorsement.
Already a classic. I think everybody will love it. So Jeremy Lee, just brilliant. So that was my first one. The second one, this is very nostalgic for me, is Morrow Easy by Sam and Sam Clark.
Oh, I'm so excited about this one because I have the other Morrow book.
When I first moved to London, well, no, it's the second time I moved to London, because I came once and then went somewhere else and then came back. Going to Morrow restaurant was just the coolest thing. And I think it's hard to imagine now quite how important it was when it opened. I think it really changed a lot of the way we eat, because, you know, all of their food is from Spain and North Africa, and they were cooking these really often quite simple things with delicious ingredients and beautifully seasoned in a way that's quite mainstream now, all of that kind of food. But there was really no one else doing it then. And it had an open kitchen, so you could see your dinner being made. That was quite unusual then too. And they wrote some excellent cookbooks, which I have, which are now full of post-it notes and covered in sauce and goodness knows what. But this is their first cookbook for 10 years. And this they wrote during lockdown when they were at home with their children. And, you know, they were thinking, well, how do you feed 5 people, 2 adults, 3 near adults, well, every single day without losing your mind? And this book, it's called Morrow Easy. So it's not millions and millions of ingredients. it's all very nice things. Lentils, peas, asparagus, and broad beans. I mean, how delicious is that? Who wouldn't want that? And sort of things on toast, and clams with white wine and coriander. I mean, absolutely soul-feedingly delicious things, but they won't take you half your natural life to make them.
Yeah, see, I think I said to you that I have the other Morrow book. If I have my glasses on, yeah, Morrow, the cookbook. But I did find there were just so many ingredients, and that can make it really pricey. So I hadn't, it had gone over my radar that there was a Morrow easy to cook out. So
this is much more pared back. So you get the same sort of flavors. And beautiful, their dishes are often really beautiful as well. And I think how food looks is so important. I'm not talking about using tweezers to put a bit of cress on something, you know, that the lovely sort of tumble of colors and textures. Their food is really beautiful. And I think this book will allow you to make really delicious things every day for your tea. You know, everybody can do an amazing Saturday night dinner or Sunday lunch if you've got lots of time. I think the challenge is to feed yourself well every day, things that will cheer you up and make you feel happy and are just full of color and life. And I think that book does that. It's just been such a joy to read it and enjoy it and think about those nice times. I think you like it. You should get it.
What else have you got?
The other one I've got is this book called Spice.
Oh yes, I'm excited about this.
It's so good, by Mark Giacono, who, full disclosure, is an old friend of mine. A long time ago, I used to work at River Cottage, and he was the head gardener at River Cottage then. And he was setting up the country's first climate change garden, which is incredible, thinking about it now. So he was growing peaches and olives and things like that down in Devon. But Mark has the most incredible palette, I think. And this book about spices is a hymn to spices. He talks about 80 different spices. I think there are about 120 recipes. And there are lots of things like making your own spice blends and sauces, ketchups, things like that. And the idea is you use those to spark up your everyday. You can do a simple thing, but then you sprinkle a bit of this in it, a bit of harissa or whatever, and it makes it much more exciting and delicious. And it also has recipes. I'm just doing his bottled apples and pears at the moment, so preserving those in time for Christmas, I hope. Also, the thing about Mark is he's really funny. So it's a very good read. I think it's one of those books that you will use forever. You know, it is one of those books that you'll have in your kitchen and it will get sort of stained with cumin and oil and sauce and all the rest of it. I think it's great. And the photographs are gorgeous. Look, how beautiful is that? I mean, who doesn't want to eat that? So I think this is, do you know what? This is a book, I think, if you've got a serious cook in your life and you don't know what to buy them for a present, this is a great book. And when I say serious, none of it is hard. It's all very simple. He's quite clever at making complex tasting things from very simple recipes. I think this would be a great book for somebody who's a serious cook.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe, like you said, the gift that what do I buy this person, and it's quite niche, isn't it? So although it sounds like it's accessible for all, it also might be that one book that's missing from someone's bookshelf.
Yeah. I think it's great, and I think you will use it for years and years if you get it. It's one of those ones I'd buy one for me and then I'll buy 4 more for other people, which I think is always a good sign of a good book.
Yeah.
So that's my third one. And my fourth one is this beautiful book by Olya Hercules.
Yes, yeah.
Called Home Food, Recipes to Comfort and Connect, which is exactly what we're talking about, really. But in Olya's case, it's even more profound because Olya is Ukrainian, and since the war started, she's been very involved with fundraising and campaigning to support the people of Ukraine. And that makes this book even more poignant. She's had a very interesting life, you know, having grown up in the Ukraine, and then she lived in Cyprus because her father was farmed sunflower or made sunflower oil. So they moved to Cyprus, and then she was in Italy, and then she moved to the UK, and she worked for Ottolenghi for a bit. but she's the most delightful person. She's a profoundly lovely person, and her food is completely delicious. And all of these recipes are recipes from all these different parts of her life. And as we were saying before, lots of them have stories attached. So lots of them are recipes from her friends and family, and from all over the world, really. And she's just such a beautiful writer. It's a book you can really lose yourself in. And that's another one that's been on my bedside table along with Jeremy for the last few weeks.
You see, I'm going to have to take them off my bedside table and shop. That's going to be the difficulty for me. So I'm going to want to read them, and I'm going to have to sell them and let them go. So,
well, then you feel like you're spreading the joy, though, so you have to comfort yourself with that. What a selfless act.
And I was thinking as well with the Morrow Easy book, is it easy or simple? Is it Morrow?
Easy.
I think I first came across the Morrow books because of Ottolenghi, because aren't they inspired by Morrow, weren't they?
I think so. I don't know that for sure, but certainly I think they helped pave the way for places like Ottolenghi.
Yeah.
It made us much more curious about those sort of Mediterranean flavors and the kind of simplicity. I know people joke, lots of Ottolenghi recipes have very long lists of ingredients, but the beauty of the recipes are they may read complex, but they don't taste complex. They don't taste like they're trying too hard,
Yeah. It's
and that's
interesting.
clever.
Yeah, it's interesting as well what you were saying about the home food book, because your book's very much like that. You talk about different places that you live. So you've got Russian recipes, and then you have the Turkish stuff is that literally from your time in northeast?
That's when I lived in London, because I lived in Stoke Newington in Hackney, which has a huge Turkish and Kurdish population and lots of Turkish restaurants, and also, as well as that, amazing Turkish food shops. Greengrocers. There's a Turkish food centre, which is a supermarket, and I used to go there on Sundays. And I used to feel a bit like I was on my holidays. I love that thing when you go on holiday and you go to a foreign supermarket. Well, I had that at the end of my road practically.
Yeah.
And I miss that here. So I'm just trying to find, because in France, there's much narrower selection of food. But I have discovered now, one of the nice things about moving to a new place is discovering new towns and cities. I live in a big village, but near us is a town called Béziers, and there's a big Moroccan, Algerian, Turkish.
Okay.
I'm just discovering shops like I used to have in Hackney and restaurants. So that's so exciting. But I think like lots of cooks, writers, you're like a magpie, really. You're sort of picking up ideas wherever you go. Any shiny thing, you're after it. So I always, all my life, before I even wrote about food, I was always filling notebooks or scraps of paper with recipes I'd eaten, dishes I'd eaten, and trying to recreate them at home. In a fairly obsessive way. So my book, Notes from a Small Kitchen Island, is really a distillation of that. All the places I've lived and been. But it's all very home cooking, because I'm quite...
there's lots of nice little things, like you were saying about the toast recipes in... can't remember which one now.
I wrote it. There's a chapter called What Do Food Writers Really Eat? Toast.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
We all, whenever I talk to other food writers, and if you're on deadline, especially with a book, because they're such long projects, by the end you're just on your knees. You're recipe testing all day, making these very delicious and exotic things, but what you're really eating while you're doing it is toast. Because you get a bit overwhelmed sometimes with all the food that you're preparing, and you sometimes want something very simple. So I bravely wrote that essay in my book about just living on toast, and thought, oh my God, what if I'm never commissioned again? I'm telling the truth about what we really do.
And you said that I think it was in cooking, in that book, he has a lot of recipes that are as simple as something on toast. And one of my favorite things is a Diana Henry recipe for this sourdough toast with goat's cheese and walnuts and baked red grapes, and like that in the winter, that's my kind of go-to supper. So I think that those recipes for the everyday cooking, like the ones that are in your book, I think they're really, really helpful.
Because I think not everything has to dance on the table, does it? That's right. You don't have, everything doesn't have to be a very elaborate recipe. I think sometimes the clever thing and the confident thing is to combine together a few ingredients really well and get the balance. Diana Henry is brilliant at that. So you have the toast, which is texture, and then you have the goat curd, which is salty and creamy, and then you have the sweetness of the grapes and the crunch of the walnuts. And that's a very simple thing, but it's actually very clever.
Yeah.
And who doesn't want that? I want that now. I might go and make that in a minute.
I forgot to mention honey and black pepper as well. So
oh yes, delicious.
right, okay. Well, thank you so much, Deborah. I've so enjoyed talking to you about these books, and I'm still waiting for the stock to come in, but I can't wait to get my hands on them, and it's going to be very hard to stick them on the shelves and on my bedside table. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
Lovely to talk to you. Thank you.